Good afternoon everybody, welcome back to Thirsty Thursday. I'm Claire Manning from Thirsty Brush and I've got another video for you today making a card with some lovely Thirsty Brush designs. So if you like this video and other ones on the channel, do subscribe to the How to Craft Network because there are tons of brands already on the channel and coming soon. So hit the notification bell too and you will get notified as soon as a new video arrives. I've got my cup of tea here, hope you have too. And I don't know whether you can see, it's like leopard print. I can't spill my tea here, but that's a bit of a clue about what we're doing today. So I'm going to try a couple of different techniques with you today in stamping and stenciling and try and create as much depth as possible with the minimal amount of stamps and stencils, but lots of different mediums, but not too many layers either. So let's give the illusion of depth without having to have the thickness of layers upon layers upon layers. So I'm using one of everybody's favourite stamp sets. I think there's a couple left. The Angel Wings, and you've got two separate wings there. And some lovely sentiments. And I'm using that's where the leopard print comes in, this lovely leopard print stencil from one of our releases just before Christmas. So just to begin with, so I will, as we're going through, give you a little rundown of what I'm using because there are, sorry, I dropped my piece of paper. There are quite a lot of different mediums to use only to create that depth, but that isn't something that you have to do. You don't have to have that stamp or stencil even. You can use the techniques that I'm going to show you for stamping, a bit of masking even for the stenciling as well, with pretty much any of your designs that you've got at home. Hopefully it's just some tips and tricks to get the look and illusion of lots of depth. So I'm making a 5x7 card, my favourite as you know. And I've pre-cut using one of the outlines like I do a lot of the time from our cover die stencil, cover dies. I've cut out one using the stitch and the dot, so I know that fits perfectly. We don't need that right now though. And I'm going to stamp onto, the first bit I'm going to do is stamp the wings onto some craft card for a change. Again, that gives lots of texture before even doing anything at all. But I'm not going to raise it up or anything like that on the card. We're just going to stamp onto it and colour it in. But a bit of stamping and colouring with a difference, of course. So you can see here, I've tested an ink that I've got to see whether it would show up. So this is actually a white pigment ink pad. Now, lots of you may have these. This is the, I never know how to say that. I'm going to call it just the Brilliance one. I'll show you. Tsukiniko, is that how you say it? I got no idea. But this is Moonlight White from the Brilliant Archival. Now, pigment inks, if you're wondering what's the difference between, say, this is a pigment ink also, but it dries really quick. White type of pigment inks tend to dry really, really slowly. So that can cause people to smudge it and things like that. We're going to try and use that to our advantage today. But hopefully this will show up nicely on this craft card. So I'm going to use, I'm just deciding which side. I'm going to use one of the wings rather than both today. And I'm not looking for a kind of super bright white crisp image. If I wanted that, I would have maybe gone with heat embossing and used our pure white powder instead. Can you see that's quite subtle? And there's a reason for that, is because we're going to colour it in and create lots of depth. So gone over twice just so it's enough to see, and I've got a guide. Just pop that aside, I'll clean that off in a second. So do just be careful when you're handling it, because it can smudge. That's dry now because I've done that a little bit before, but it can smudge quite easily. So to colour in this part, I'm going to use one of the confetti inks, and I'm going to try and get more of a bright white in the texture of the feathers of these wings, using this white in the sections. So I've got a couple of quite fine brushes. I'm not 100% sure which one's going to work best, but let's pop some water on this white paint. You can use just normal white watercolour paint. This is a double up one, which means it's got double pigment and it shows up better on craft and darker cards. But if you've got a gouache or a white watercolour, say in a little watercolour palette, it will work, it just won't be quite as bright as this. So I'm going to start each feather. Now there is detail on there already, I'll leave some of it showing, but I'm doing really light strokes, barely touching the card, so you get a bit of a feathered appearance to the end of where your brush is then. And I'm not using too much water on this tiny little brush. So we'll see how this looks. So you can see I'm probably only going half of the way up each feather, not completely covering it, because that will give us the illusion of light and shade, even though all we're using is one colour of the white. Probably a bit too much water on that one. Can you see the less water you use, the more of a kind of feathered look you get? So it's quite a mindful thing to do as well. And I do lots of kind of quick cards that don't take too long, but this actually might be one that's nice for, you know, just really relaxing and feeling like you're doing, it should look like a painted image completely, but obviously you've used that stamp. These lovely feathers that come down, make sure we get the shape. Can you see I'm changing direction as the feathers come down, because you want it to look realistic in terms of where the feathers would naturally be. So they would be growing downwards, these ones. As if, you know, I know I've seen an angel with wings, but you know, you see the images around, don't you, or think of bird feathers and things like that. I don't think I've personally got an angel. Maybe I could do with one. I know lots of people use this image for sympathy cards and things like that as well, because of the sentiment, or, you know, thinking of you cards. So it is perfect for that kind of thing. So this one kind of curves around. And then we're on to the next layer of the normal feathers then. So again, if we do the half way up the feather, that gives us some shade then from the layer behind. And when we build it up and come down, it should start to look as if it's popping out of the page without having... I've done this stamp lots of times with layers of vellum or layers of card to physically get dimension, but I thought I'd try it like this time. yeah, this tiny little brush seems to be working well. This is a size 3. Oh yeah, it's much better when I do less water. I get much more texture in the strokes, I think. Don't know whether you can see that. That one I probably used a bit too much water, and then these ones a bit less. See if we can pick some of that up for the next one. But yeah, it seems to give a much more natural, realistic look. Less water. But you do need to do it every now and then just to so it doesn't completely dry out. Yeah, that's a little bit too less. You can always have a piece of scrap if you're not used to using these type of paints. Huge amount to practice beforehand. Have a piece of scrap paper or card, sorry, particularly in the colours that you're using, and then you can practice your strokes on that first. So we're on to the next layer, and the reason I've done it in this order, this one first and the outside in, is so I'm not leaning on what's wet. But my brush strokes are still away from me and in the correct direction. It's actually really fun to do. And then this last bit that holds it all together. I think I need a bit more up there. That looks really pretty, doesn't it? Sorry. Artistic license here. I just want, that's such a lovely long bit of the feather. I just wanted to go down a little bit further on a couple of those. Make them really stand out. Better? Lovely. So I'm just going to pop that aside to dry. Sippy tea. I'm thinking what we're doing next. Right. Let's stamp. I want to use a bit of masking for the feather as well. So I want to create what's called a mask. Excuse me, making sure my fully hydrated. So if you haven't done this before, this is special masking paper where it's got a texture on the front, semi-translucent paper, and the back, it's got this plastic on it, but then when you peel it back, it's low tack, so it can be laid over something, so you can create depth and seams, but then because it's low tack, you can just take it off and use it again. So I'll never throw my masks away once I create them. So it doesn't matter what you stamp your image with on this, just make sure you can see it, because it's just a guide for you. Now there is a die that comes with this set, but because I want my mask to be the exact shape and the die gives me a 1mm border, just going to loosely cut around this. I'm going to actually fussy cut it. But if you don't mind the 1mm border in the masking, by all means use the die. And you'll notice if you've got this set, that you've got 2 separate dies for the stamps and 2 separate dies, 2 separate dies for the stamps, sorry. Yeah, so, and the stamps themselves, I mean, are separate. So that what that means is lots of kind of angel wing ones that I've seen, or wings in general, they were just one big image, and I thought, well, what if you just want to use part of it, or layer it up, or, you know, do all these different techniques with it. So I made sure that it had got separate stamps and separate dies for you to make that easier. So I'm fussy cutting right on the line here. I'm not being mega accurate. I would probably take a little bit more time if this was going on the card, but it's just my mask, so you just want it as close to the line as you can. Oh, I've got a lovely bit of sunshine here now. Is it a bit too glary? I'll pull the curtain for you. There we go. Now we can use that mask by just peeling that off, which I'll show you in a second. Let me just do that curtain because it's a bit too... So next I need, remember my white panel that I did to fit onto my card? So I've also fussy cut the wing that I painted. So that's going to go around there eventually, coming off the side of the page. But what I want to do is create a second one in the background, so kind of poking. So I'm just using, I'm not sticking that one down at the moment. I'm just going to lay that on roughly where I want it. Still had a bit of black on, I didn't end up wiping that off. So just stamping black again, but this time onto the card. And then we're going to colour that in and then use our mask. So just to give you a heads up of where this is going. Use our mask to then create the background without adding another layer. So the reason I've done this one in black rather than the white is again to try and get that illusion of depth without having to layer up the wing too much. So let's get my white again, but this time I'm going to mix it with some of the Deep Forest, which is the black one, to create a grey. So let me do my white first because I don't want to end up using too much grey. And I'm just using my lid as a palette. Right, let's go with that and have a look. So that's a kind of mid-grey, I'd say. Might have a bit too much water on there. I think that's going to be all right. And obviously we'll have to, unless you mix enough to do the whole image straight away, we'll have to go in and do a bit more and a bit more anyway. And that will give us kind of slightly different tones, which again, we'll just add to it. So same as before. This is the same technique I use a lot when I'm using watercolours or even pens. You'll see me use when I colour in flowers that we've stamped. It's basically the same technique, but here we're just using a feather sections rather than petals. So I very often just go from the base and then just flick up. It's about practicing just having, I say this all the time, but getting your hand really loose, you know, so you can get that flick really natural. So loosening up, only using the very tip of your brush, you're barely touching the paper. Got a little smudge there, but we can make a feature of that, can't we? It just gives you a really easy way to create light and shade with just one colour. So your paint is concentrated the most at the base of your feather. And then you get that lovely flick. So you can see here, depending on how much water you use, how much paint you use, you're starting to get different variants of the grey. And that's great because that starts to add even more texture. Got a bit too much water on that one. So I'm going to pick some of it up on my brush and move it round to the next one. Some of these inner feathers are just going to be hidden, so I'm not concentrating on them too much. But I better do them just in case some of them are on show, and it shows you the technique again. Okay, so I hope you can see kind of where we're going with that. Then you've got the darker one, which is tucked behind, and the lighter one on top. So that's really the only kind of dimension on the card, but we're going to create a background behind that on that same piece of card now without die cutting or fussy cutting that out. No, I was going to stamp my sentiment, but I will do that at the end. So just leave that to dry for a second. So that's all nice and dry now, and I've got my leopard print stencil. So I'm just going to do a little bit of ink blending to create this pattern. So I've got a few distress inks, or you can use, these are distress oxide, sorry, or you can use distress inks. I've got antique linen, rusty hinge, gathered twigs and black soot. So that to me is kind of leopard print colours. I'm thinking use these two for the base and then these two for the detail. So to put a base colour down, this is where the mask comes in, because obviously I don't want to get all this lovely pattern and ink and spoil where I've done my design. So this mask that we made, just peel it off the backing, keep that, because that will keep your sticky bit nice and sticky, but not too sticky. And I've just layered it over. So now when we add ink, I'm trying to think of which brand this is. It might be Sticks to this masking material. I mean, I've also, when I've not had this, used copier paper and applied it with, so, you know, like a little loop of latex tape or something like that. I was too busy talking then. I've caused a couple of rings by not coming off the side. So I'm going in with the palest colour and just blending out. Let's cover those little ring bits. We've got some darker colours, so I don't think that should be too bad. So I want this pattern to kind of burst out from behind the wings. So this is, what did I say, antique linen, which is like a creamy, it's not too yellow, it's not too brown. It's really nice. Do a little bit this side as well, just so it doesn't look too bare. Most of this, again, will be covered. If you've got our Tony's big brushes, blending brushes, they will be perfect for this. I'll put them in a box somewhere when I rearranged. I can't find them. Anyway, so I just want to add the tiniest bit of this because this is quite a strong colour. I hope I don't ruin it doing this. Just to give some variation in that background colour. So you can see it doesn't matter as mucky, get that mask as mucky as you like because it's never going to transfer onto your lovely image below. Right, I think that's good for the background. So that's kind of our base of our classic leopard. Go wild if you want to do different colours though for the leopard print. I know our design team girls have done some absolutely fabulous colourful designs with this stencil. That's the end of a roll. Just want to put a tiny bit of low tack tape just to hold that stencil in place. And let's go in with the black and the brown. So mainly a classic leopard print is bits of black, isn't it? But let's blend in some browns as well. I haven't cleaned off my brush, so it shouldn't do it super brown. And then I just want to have barely anything on my brush and just blend out to the edge now. So I've got the most colour concentrated on where the wings will pop out. And it should get lighter. Looks like a hot mess right now, doesn't it? I hope this works when we peel it back. So that's our background. And then hopefully when we peel this one back, we'll have our lovely unspoilt wing underneath. There we go. So that's on one piece of card, and I think that really gives the illusion that that might have been die cut and layered on, but it hasn't. So that's going to layer over. I just want to do, I'm going to do my sentiment just stamped there for a change. I do lots of like stamp it, emboss it, die cut it, or chop it down. I just want to have a simple. Let's have a look what we've got. I don't feel it's really a card for the You Are My Angel. Let's do the Today's All About You. I feel it's more of a, maybe a birthday card or something rather than or a happy occasion rather than a romantic or sympathy type one. Get dog hairs on everything. So everybody else who have dogs. And I'm just going to go in with my normal black Burst Fine ink just to make that nice and bold and stand out. There we go. And all we've got to do now is build it up on the card and adhere that panel and the wing. So we've only got 2 layers now. And I'm not using any foam pads or anything. By all means, if you want to add extra texture again, raise up your wings even more if you want to. Why can't I get any glue out of this? Maybe it helps when you take the nip off the end. I hadn't snipped it. So that should go straight on with a little border, but there's no cutting or measuring there when you use those outer dies of our cover dies. They just fit perfectly. And then, where should we have it? Kind of here, so it's just poking out. So I might not go to the edge. I said no texture. I kind of want to now leave some of this with a bit of shape, but that's totally up to you. If you need to post it and it needs to be flat, then don't shape it at all. There we go. That was a bit different, isn't it? So I hope you enjoyed that. You got stenciling, you got masking, you got stamping, you got watercolouring, bit of die cutting just for the frame. But I hope you're all well anyway. I know we didn't talk much general today, so I hope you're well, and I will be back again on the How to Craft Network, Tony's previously known as Stamps by Me channel, but it's been updated now because we've got lots of brands on there. So it's a real place for you to come and get all sorts of inspiration from loads of us. So I'll be back on there on Sunday at 1 p.m. I'll see you then. You take care and stay safe.